Today we're going to talk about if your ex ever loved you. And I really find that this question kind of goes hand in hand with people asking, was my past relationship real or not? Usually what happens after a breakup is your ex will say or do things that make you think they didn't love you, they didn't care about you at all. And I guess what we're going to be doing today is looking at the 7 signs or 7 ways that you can tell if your relationship was real. You can tell if your ex actually loved you during that relationship. So let's just start at the top. Way number 1, the length and depth of your relationship. This is without a doubt probably the most simple concept there is, but a lot of people overlook it. So one of the ways that you can tell that your relationship with your ex was for real or that your ex loved you is simply by taking a step back, looking at the macro view of your relationship. How long was your relationship? It's true that not all relationships are created equally, right? Someone who dated an ex for 3 weeks is not going to have the same level of commitment or connection compared to someone who dated an ex for 7 years. So length alone can tell you a lot about how invested and interested your ex was in the relationship, but I also find that combining it with depth is important as well. Where were you at in your relationship? Were you just simply a boyfriend and a girlfriend? Were you living together? Were you engaged? Were you married? All of this stuff can help us understand the depth of the relationship. So if you really are worried about what your ex is saying to you, they're saying, I don't love you, or I never loved you at all, and you're sitting there and thinking, well, that doesn't make sense. You seem like you were so in love with me throughout the course of the relationship. Probably the best thing you can do is just take a step back after some time and look at how long you dated this person and the depth of your relationship. Those 2 factors alone will tell you a lot about really where your ex is coming from. And we're going to talk a lot more about what it means when they say, I don't love you and things like that. But let's move on to way number 2. Way number 2, investment equality post-breakup. Recently, I've been doing a lot of research on how to make men and women commit to you. Basically, what are the tenets of what makes someone want to commit to you? And we found that there's really 6 factors that matter: satisfaction, alternatives, investment, scarcity, urgency, and fear of loss. Combined, those 6 factors make up pretty much most of the reasons why we make commitment decisions in relationships. But when you actually look at research from psychotherapists and psychologists, what they tell us is that one of the factors matters a lot more than the other, and that is investment. What they're finding is even if they're in an unsatisfying relationship or your ex is sitting there with you and thinking I can do better than him or her, they won't really act on that if they feel like they've invested a lot into the relationship. No one wants to waste their time. And sometimes moving on is an admission that I made a mistake dating with this person. So with that in mind, let's look at it post-breakup. Your most valuable commodity or valuable resource that you personally have isn't your money, isn't your, fitness or wealth or whatever. I said wealth twice, but you get what I'm saying here. It's time. It's the one thing that none of us knows how much we have, and we can never get back once it's spent. So if your ex is investing a lot of time into you post-breakup, it is an indication that they are having a lot of second thoughts about the breakup in and of itself, aka they loved you a lot during the relationship, and it's just taking them until now to realize that fact. Way number 3, your ex is a fearful avoidant. I thought this deserved its own sign or way because really the rest of these signs are going to be hitting home with fearful avoidance. So what is a fearful avoidant person? Well, a fearful avoidant is a type of attachment style that you can have in a relationship. The best way I can explain it is to get you to picture a seesaw. On one end of the seesaw is someone who deeply wants a relationship and feels like they can't live without a relationship. On the other end of the seesaw is someone who is the exact opposite. They kind of want a relationship, but they are too scared to get too close. Someone who's a fearful avoidant will literally seesaw between these 2 ideals throughout the entirety of your relationship. And this doesn't stop when they've gone through a breakup. So you go through a breakup and you're noticing, wow, they've moved on to someone else, or they've acted like they don't like me or never liked me, and then maybe 6 months down the road, they're reaching out to you because they have a bout of nostalgia. Just understanding a fearful avoidant will give you a lot of insight into the next few signs that I'm going to be explaining to you right here, right now. Real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. Way number 4. Even though they move on, they talk to you more than they do to the new person. All right, let's stick with the fearful avoidant mindset. Everyone has a different way of coping with breakups. Some people cope very healthily. They admit, hey, I maybe did some things wrong in the relationship, and then they move on. Some people take the opposite track. They immediately blow up their ex's phone trying to win them back. They cry, they show up at the doorstep, they try to go through their friends or family to get to them. They kind of take the anxious route. Other people will take the avoidant route. They'll cut you off, they'll block you, they'll ghost you. But what's interesting about fearful avoidance is one of the ways we're finding people cope with breakups is not thinking a lot about the current heartbreak, but rather replacing it by dating someone else. And there's some psychology behind this. If you actually look at fearful avoidance, one of the misconceptions they have about relationships is that they always think that everything needs to feel like it feels during the honeymoon period. If you actually study the honeymoon period, you'll notice all the chemicals that's being released by your brain based on the different stimulus you're having when you're dating this person is crazy. But then it kind of normalizes. Well, when the normalization happens for a fearful avoidant, the pattern we're noticing occurs is they drop the current person they're with, and instead of dealing with that heartbreak, they'll move on to someone else and try to not necessarily replace you, but try to use that person to distract themselves so they can kind of not feel the heartbreak and get that surge of emotions that happens when you're in the honeymoon period. Now, why is this important? Well, if you're noticing that your ex has moved on to someone else, but they can't help it but just continue to talk to you, try to rely on you for emotional support, it is a sign that they are not super happy in this relationship, otherwise they wouldn't be doing that, and they're having a lot of nostalgia. And we all know that someone who's an avoidant will often try to get back in touch with you when they feel like there's no chance of getting back together with you at all. Why? Nostalgia. They want to almost relive that, and that's what's happening here. Way number 5, they can't kick old habits or patterns. Have you ever been talking with an ex? Things seem to be going really, really well, and then they call you by a pet name. They call you babe or hun or honey or whatever it is. Well, what we're noticing is that exes who really have a hard time of getting over their previous relationship will be kind of stuck in these old patterns. Essentially, they will do everything they did with you while they were dating you without all the physical aspects. So they're relying on you for emotional support. They're calling you and having conversations with you like they did when they were in a relationship with you, yet they don't want that relationship. And again, you can tie this to the avoidant mindset. They're in that seesaw phase where they're kind of like, I need to push people away, I need my own independence, but they also kind of like that emotional dependence they had on you. And so they want to have their cake and eat it too, so to speak. This isn't necessarily a sign that your ex or the relationship with you didn't mean anything. I would take it as the opposite track. The fact that they had such a strong connection with you that even though they broke up with you, they still want to get back in touch with you tells me that they still value your relationship and that it wasn't for nothing and it was real. Way number 6, their actions post-breakup don't match their words. Like I said, every single breakup is different. But every single breakup has one thing in common, and that is the emotional aspect of it becomes kind of out of whack. You're going to say things you don't mean. Your ex is going to say things they don't mean. I don't love you. We're not meant together. You're trying to force things. Why do you keep bugging me? All of this stuff is meant to push you away. It's meant to try to help you understand or closure or whatever. But what we're finding is true is time is the true test. What I mean by that is your ex's actions mean a lot more to the grand scheme than their actual words. So don't get hung up on your ex's words. If you want to understand what someone means, you can kind of look at the results and infer sort of the motivations. This is something that was said by Carl Jung himself. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that means if you and your ex are talking and things seem to be going well and you're flirting, and for whatever reason you can't get your mind off of the fact that he said he never loved you at all, and yet he's doing all this flirting with you, those actions do mean something. They don't mean nothing. They give you some insight into how he's feeling. But here's the interesting thing with avoidant people, or fearful avoidant people. What they'll do is they'll kind of seesaw back from anxious to avoidant. So you need to understand that someone like this needs time. The worst thing you can do is try to push it too much too soon. Remember, when they pull back, you pull back. And that's what can kind of continue to draw them in. It's a little like fishing in that way. You kind of put the line out, you wait for the fish to bite the hook, and then instead of just reeling it back in all the time, you need to kind of give them a little bit to go out and kind of slowly pull them in. Same principle applies here. Way number 7, they get super angry at you during no contact, but are super receptive when the texting phase starts. So anyone who's familiar with ERP knows the concept of the value ladder. Basically, it's this ideal of how you're supposed to treat the mediums of communication that you're having with your ex post-breakup. And it always starts the same way for everyone, no matter if they're trying to get their ex back or get over their ex. You're always doing a period of no contact and using that period of no contact not to focus on your ex, but to focus on yourself. Of course, every ex has a different reaction. Some exes will go berserk after they realize they're being ignored. Some exes will try the revenge path. They will literally block you to show you. Some exes take it in stride. They're like, all right, whatever, she's over me, I'm gonna move on. Some exes, on the other hand, will sit there and get really upset at first and then kind of take the hint. But how they respond during that no contact period can tell you a lot about sort of how much they valued communication with you on a daily basis. But that's not gonna tell you if they really had super strong feelings for you or not. After all, the no contact rule in and of itself can be a little bit manipulative. So what matters more to us is studying how they react to no contact and then studying how receptive they are during the texting phase. What we're finding is people who are really regretting their decisions, who are really in love with you, will kind of blow your phone up during no contact, get really angry at you, and then sort of get the hint. And then when the texting phase starts, when you reach out and begin that texting phase, they're super receptive. Their word count is high. Their response time is high. The topics you're having of conversations are interesting and engaging, and the conversations last a really long time. If you're finding this is happening, it is an indication to us that your relationship wasn't not for real, and that your ex, well, I would say it's a far stretch for saying they love you right now. They did love you when you had your relationship originally.